What's going on, everybody? Welcome back on air with Chris Janifel. It's a pleasure to have on this week a former college walk-on at the Division II level, who would then go on to become a center at the NFL level and spent the majority of his career with the Chicago Bears, but also spent time with the Jets, the Lions, Cardinals. We have Taylor Boggs joining us on air tonight. First and foremost, Taylor, appreciate you taking the time. I had you on a couple, actually, almost 4 years ago to the day, believe it or not, which is criminal because it was an awesome podcast. You offered awesome insight. But needless to say, long time no talk, Taylor. How's everything been going on your end?
Oh no, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Everything is well over here. We're in a bit of a monsoon right now in Arizona, so hopefully I keep my connection. But everything else is going well. Thanks for having me.
A monsoon in Arizona. I mean, is this one of the days of the decade or what?
No, it was crazy for me, but moving from Southern California to here, it's always storming like in the July August time, and
Okay.
you know, this has just been a crazy year for it.
Right. Okay, well, Taylor, I mean, this is a completely different, and obviously we're going to be focusing on the Chicago Bears. It's the team that you spent the majority of your NFL career with, and obviously, me being in Chicago, it's definitely a team and an offensive line position group that I'd like to get your thoughts on. This is a completely different team than it was the last time we spoke. Again, almost 4 years ago to the day. From the general manager and head coach to the quarterback to everybody on the offensive line, except Cody Whitehair. Have you been paying much attention to the Bears these past couple of years?
Yeah, in all honesty, Bears are my team. Like that is the team that like I claim the most. Um, I think just from a historic perspective, I love Chicago. I love the city when I was there. I love the organization. My mentors are, they're Bears. Roberto Garza, Olin Kreutz. Those are like lifelong Bears for the most part. And so yeah, no, I'm a Chicago guy. I pay attention. That's the team I care about.
Hey, the GSH on the hat, man. Got to point it out. I see it. I see it up there. There it is, the Bears hat. So
Yeah.
you gotta love it. You gotta love it. And I'd be remiss if I started anywhere but the center position on the offensive line with you, Taylor. Arguably the team's biggest free agent acquisition this past offseason was Lucas Patrick, the center who's coming over from Green Bay. Unfortunately, on the second day of training camp, Patrick broke his thumb on his snapping hand, had to have surgery, and is expected to be out for 6 weeks. If that's the case, he could be ready by week one of the regular season against the San Francisco 49ers. But as a center, Taylor, just how critical is a broken thumb to the snapping hand to a center? Have you ever dealt with an injury like this? Broken thumb, broken finger, broken hand to that snapping hand? And two-part question. If Lucas Patrick is back and ready to go by week one, do you think they just throw him right back at center, or could we see him at guard for the first week or two to get him back up to speed?
Yeah, I mean, like honestly, the thumbs are like common injuries with the center position, but they have these splints that work well. Everyone tears their ligament. They tell you to have surgery. You don't have surgery. You put the splints on. You're good to go. But I think it's a little different when it breaks. So yeah, that's a challenge. You got to get your dexterity back, all that kind of stuff. To be honest, though, like for me, my center one is Sam Mustipher. I'm gonna roll with Sam on that one. That's who I like at center. I went back and watched the film recently last year versus Indianapolis. He does a lot of good things. He's come from like a hard position, being a undrafted and stuff, and he's worked his way up. I think he works well with the other guys. I don't know why you wouldn't just roll with Sam for week one. Granted that Lucas has to get his thumb back and everything. And I think he's a good player too. I've watched him a lot. Obviously, I had to watch him twice a year when I'm watching Bears.
Right, right. All right. So you bring up Sam Mustipher, and actually, it does seem like he's grown quite a bit, even just from last year to this year. Just in the one preseason game that we've seen, and then being able to attend a couple training camp practices at Hallis Hall, Taylor. A lot of people would say, though, your guy Sam Mustipher was the weak link to the offensive line last year. Now, one of those people that have been working with Mustafa not only this past offseason, but the last couple of off seasons, really ever since he's been in Chicago, I believe. And that's one of your mentors, Olin Kreutz. Obviously, one of the all-time greats, not only in Bears history, but just looking at centers all across the league in the history of the NFL. So if you could just go on about Sam Mustafa, some of the things you see in his game and some of the things he can grow on and what he should be kind of working on in order to better his game.
Yeah, I mean, so he didn't have, he had tough games, he had good games and stuff. I've watched better ones, I've watched worse ones. I've watched, games that were called bad, and I'm like, really? There's a couple snaps and stuff, a couple miscommunications, whatever. But like, yes, I do have inside information. I know that if there's anyone that gets you right, screw the physical part. You know what I mean? I think he has that. Like, he played at Notre Dame and all that. But from a mental standpoint, like, you come into a team, they sign a center, they're not really looking at you long term. You start all these games, like, that messes with you. You know what I mean? You start becoming a robot because you don't want to mess up, because you're afraid to mess up. You don't behave that way when you hang out with Olin Kreutz. So from my inside information, I know that he's ready physically and mentally to be that guy. And I'm telling you, I would roll with him my day one center with Sam Mustafa. That's what I would roll with inside information and looking at like the upside of his game. I'm rolling with Sam.
What is the upside?
And you got to remember, he's just getting better and better every year. And I think I could see him playing well in this zone scheme. He has like a good build where I think like he can manage these one-on-ones with these nose guards, these shades. Because when you're looking at center, you want them to be able to reach that in a zone offense. That's your hard position. Can they reach that zone or reach that nose in the zone? Can they handle him one-on-one? Are they getting dented in the backfield? I don't see him getting dented in the backfield. He's a bigger, stronger guy. And I'm rolling with Sam. And I'm not taking anything away from Lucas. I think he's a good player too. But that's my right guard right now.
Okay, interesting. So, with Sam Mustafa and knowing his background, and again, like I said, a lot of people, whether it's true or not, many people looked at him as a big issue on the offensive line last year. It looked as if this new regime was kind of trying to push him out and kind of trying to test him. And now here he is, a major injury at the center position. Week one of the regular season is up in the air for Lucas Patrick as of right now. And here they are now turning back to Sam Mustafa. I mean, I got to think that, and as a player like yourself, Taylor, being one of those guys on the reserve role on the offensive line and then asked to be a starter on the offensive line, I got to think that this only gives Sam Mustafa even more of a chip on his shoulder and even more reason to be ready come week one if asked to be the starting center.
Yeah, he for sure has a chip on his shoulder, right? Because and they were trying to sign other centers and stuff like that, addressing offseason needs and stuff like that with Chicago as they should. Because at the end of the day, he's undrafted. He has to beat out somebody to become that guy, right? But in this instance, given all this stuff going on, I know he's ready, because when you hang around someone like Olin, he's got all the insight. He's seen it all. He's done it all, and he can help you be prepared for this stuff. So, yeah, not only does he have a chip on his shoulder, a lot of people have a chip on their shoulder, but are they ready? And I know he's put in the work. I know he's ready. So I got faith in that. Just knowing what he's done this offseason, I got nothing but faith in him.
I got to think just hearing stories and not that I know Olin at all, but just hearing the stories and just kind of, watching him on the post-game shows and listening to him on the radio. If you're not ready training with Olin Kreutz, I got to think there's an ass whooping coming your way.
You're not in that gym. I'll tell you that much. You're not going to be in that gym.
Hey, Taylor, last time we spoke, you mentioned that you thought and again, this is like 4 years ago now. You mentioned how you thought the best position for Cody Whitehair was the center position. The last couple of years, he shifted back to guard, but he did indeed see quite a bit of time at center, and for the most part did a fine job. There was some struggles snapping the ball, but I'm not entirely sure. I think his first time playing the center position was in the NFL. He played some tackle and then guard at Kansas State. I think his first time playing center was in the NFL. So there were some issues snapping the ball, but it seemed like he was able to kind of overcome that pretty quickly. Do you still have the same thoughts on Whitehair as you did a few years ago? And just how has his career played out up to this point, in your opinion, as he's now the longest tenured Bear on the offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, so his rookie year was 2016, I believe. He was a left tackle in college, and he just kind of got thrusted into that center spot during camp. Or I think it was right before, and I wasn't the Cardinals then, but literally it was right before week 1 that they were like, we're gonna roll with Cody, and he had some snap issues in 17. Then he went to that dead ball snap. If we're being honest, he's probably the best center option on that team, right? And he got that big contract at knowing that he was going to be moved to guard. But yeah, I mean, I could see him being the best center option with Cody. When he hit people, they went backwards. And, you don't see a lot of, he's a bigger center, and you don't see that often where, they hit someone, where the center's hitting people, they go backwards. A lot of times you see stalemates, they see him flat. A lot of times you see him position blocking and ending up in the backfield. That's why I like Cody's game. He hit guys, they went backwards, and you got to respect that. So yeah, he could very well be the best center on this Bears team, but he's probably the best left guard on this Bears team as well. I mean, is the best guard on this Bears team. He's right. A good one. He's a good player. He's their most solid player. Just across the board when it comes to run blocking, pass pro, leader, all that. I know he has great work ethic. Cody's the guy. You know what I mean? Like that position obviously is written in ink. You know what I mean? He's the starting left guard. I think I'd have an argument for one other really solid player. I don't know if everyone would agree with it though.
Let's hear it.
Borum.
Oh, Larry. Oh, he's been. Hey, you know what? And I got him in my notes here. I'm definitely going to ask you about him and get your thoughts on him. He was a bright spot of last season. There weren't too many bright spots last year, but Larry Borum was definitely a bright spot last year. And we're definitely going to ask you about him. Again, he's Taylor Boggs, former NFL center, joining us here on air with Chris Shanafel. And let's just pick it up right there. What do you got on Larry Borum, the 5th-round pick last year out of Mizzou, who really turned some heads at right tackle last year, started a handful of games, more than a handful of games last season, and seemed to have really held his own. And coming into this year, dropped some weight, looking like he's in the best shape of his life, at least in his very short NFL career, obviously. And that was an emphasis on this new Bears regime. Ryan Poles, a former offensive lineman himself, obviously the entirely new coaching staff. And it seems like they've given Larry Borum just about every chance that they could to earn that right tackle starting position.
Yeah, I mean, to me, he has to be on the field. You know what I mean? Like, if Cody has to be on the field, we could argue semantics on Sam and Lucas being the starting center. To me, Larry has to be on that field. Whether it's right tackle, I bet you he's probably the best right guard option. You know what I mean? I think I can make that argument. And he's probably, and this is new to me, and I don't want to take credit for the idea. It's from Olin, but he could be that left tackle too. He might be the best left tackle option on that team too. But Larry, to me, has to be on the field. I remember watching him his first start last year. I'm like, holy crap, this guy does a lot of good stuff. Like, and it was a surprise because there was the whole tackle drama or whatever. And you're like, holy crap, this is a good player. And then just watching this last preseason game is, to me, he has to be on that line. You know what I mean? If Cody's inked in, Larry has to be inked in somewhere.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people would agree with you on that. Now, Taylor, let's talk about a player that was a part of that same draft class as Larry Borum last year. Now, before Roquan Smith requested a trade from the Bears about 10 days ago, the biggest storyline surrounded Tevin Jenkins, who the Bears traded up for and selected 39th overall in last year's draft in the 2nd round. And there's a lot to unpack here. Right before the start of his rookie season last year, he had to undergo back surgery, but he did make it back in time and finished the season, played in the team's final 5 games, even started a game or two at the end of last season. Now, heading into this season with a new regime, seemed like it was an uphill battle for Tevin Jenkins. Larry Borum, as we just talked about, who was a part of that same draft class, taken 3 rounds later, was getting his reps at right tackle. Rookie 5th-round picks out of Southern Utah, Braxton Jones, has been turning a bunch of heads, and he's been getting all the snaps at left tackle and has been doing so since minicamp. And then to make matters even worse for Tevin, the Bears decided to ink veteran offensive tackle Riley Reef to a 1-year deal worth up to 12 million, 10 million guaranteed. So I mean, that's not really a contract you're looking to move away from anytime soon this season. Obviously, Jenkins was present during the first day of training camp a few weeks ago, and then went on to miss the next 7 or 8 practices. Coaching staff wouldn't really explain why. But in the midst of all of this, Taylor, NFL Network reported that teams were calling the Bears, inquiring about Tevin Jenkins, and the Bears were making their own calls as well around the league. There was a rumor that from some pretty credible reporters in Chicago that Jenkins and the new offensive line coach, Chris Morgan, didn't really get along, didn't see eye to eye, and that could be an issue. Tevin has since shot those rumors down, though. And he has been at practice the last week and a half. And just earlier this week, Monday, Tevin Jenkins was getting snaps at right guard. Every now and then, Taylor, you hear about guards impressing so much that the team has the desire to move them to offensive tackle. And I'm sure this isn't the first, but it doesn't seem like too often you hear about teams converting tackles to guards. What's your take on all this surrounding Tevin Jenkins, and do you think that this could be a successful experiment?
Okay, a lot to digest there. So I don't get caught up in the rumors or the drama, right? Because I hear stories on the inside, like I've been on teams and I've heard the media paint something different, or they had an inside source, and I'm like, well, the truth lies in that locker room. So if they don't get along or he's being acting some type of way, the players know, and I think that's as far as that needs to go. So like, just to not disrespect anyone's locker room. Next, like with Tevin, yeah, he like last year when he started, you could see like he was a little raw. He did some good stuff. You could see he's a good athlete. He moves well. He has good feet. They weren't like displayed that way, but you could tell like he could be coached up. He came into a tough spot. Like when you get strong lifting, you get strong training and stuff. And he was rehabbing during that time, but you get your strongest playing your sport. You get your strongest getting that man-on-man contact on the field. So he comes in. These guys already got their rhythm down. They got their strength. They're stronger than him. So it was a tough place to come into, right? So that's not the easiest thing to come off of surgery mid-season as a rookie. The other we still good?
Yep, got you back. Sorry about
that. Sorry about when he got drafted, the Bears kind of like cut a WWE promo. Like they didn't do him any justice there. So they had all this hype going on. He gets hurt. It was a bunch of unfortunate events, right? And you see people build up the rookies. You got to get them on the field first before you start, cutting these promos. That's my opinion. But next, there are tackles that become really good guards. I'll name you two that are the best right guards in the game probably right now. You got Zach Martin, the left tackle at Notre Dame. You got Brandon Sheriff, right guard. He was a left tackle at Iowa. So it can happen. I think that, one thing we would all like is that when people say we get the best 5 on the field, blah, 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 meaning like, hey, this guy's a second string left tackle, but he might be our best right guard. It's not always true, but it's the best guy at that position. You know what I mean? The best 5. It's a tough thing to say because it's really difficult to play different positions. It's different to go from it's difficult to go from left to right or right to left, inside to outside, outside to inside. But you kind of, maybe they find something there. Maybe he's that right guard. You could see like he has the talent. He's strong. He's big. He moves well. They're going to be running that zone. He could handle that 3-tech one-on-one. He could handle that uncovered. He moves well enough to play uncovered in that zone scheme. Like I could see it happening. But you have other options too. Like you got that could play right guard as well. Obviously, they want to get him on the field. He's a second-round pick. You got Riley Reef. You paid him some money. He's probably going to be on the field. Is he going to play the whole year? We'll see. He really didn't miss many games in his career. I think he's missed like 13 games his entire career. I played with Riley. He's a great guy, but he's older. I think if you weren't going to address left tackle early on in the offseason, bringing Riley in is a good call because you know what you got. You got a solid player that, for the most part, doesn't miss games. Jenkins at right guard, maybe that works out. Maybe it doesn't. You know what I mean? It's one of those things like try to get the best five on the field, but you got to get that player at the best position he's at. And if he's not the best left tackle on the field, then try him somewhere else. He ain't going anywhere. He's a second round pick. He's got a little rope. They give him a little extra slack for that. It's not like he's undrafted, right? So they'll try to find him. See maybe he can be in that top five. They just got to find the position that works best for him.
He's former NFL center Taylor Boggs. We're talking about the Chicago Bears and this offensive line group. And Taylor, earlier in this interview, you mentioned how the Bears are your team. You got the Bears hat on. So I know you watched some Bears football last year, and I think one of the bright moments for this offensive line was when I think it was against the Minnesota Vikings. Justin Fields takes a late hit out of bounds, and here's Tevin Jenkins in one of his first games as a pro, getting up in these faces of these Minnesota Vikings defenders that just took this late hit on Justin Fields, and almost immediately you got a veteran and Jermaine Ifedi running over to Tevin Jenkins, telling him, what are you doing? They're kind of arguing on the field, telling him to stop. I understand you don't want the flag to be thrown, but I do think there's in an instance, and you know better than I, and I'm really curious to hear your take on this, but when you see your quarterback and, Tevin Jenkins, again, this was one of his first games of the season, so it had already been happening for 12, 13 games of the year. Justin Fields taking these hits and the offensive line. And maybe it's the fan in me that I probably do read more into it and think a little more of it than maybe the everyday player, like yourself, Taylor. But when a offensive lineman, and actually I think Olin has been pretty outspoken on this, when an offensive lineman just sees his quarterback kind of getting himself up a little slowly, not there helping him up, not, at his defense. I thought that was really good and really nice to see from Tevin Jenkins last year. I know it's not really anything, really breaking down his game or anything like that. But I think having that, especially seeing it out of a rookie where you didn't really see it all season long until the end of the season when Jenkins finally gets on the field, I thought that was really nice to see. And even Ryan Poles at his introductory press conference kind of singled that out, that he wants to see a little bit more of that in his offensive linemen. You being a former center, Taylor, I mean, your reaction to that play, if you recall it, and just kind of how the offensive line backed up or lack thereof Justin Fields last season?
I'm not going to call anyone out, but I will say this, that Jenkins, he was clearly raised right because that's what he's supposed to do. What I saw was Jenkins was fighting several purple jerseys and a couple of his own jerseys, or at least one of his own jerseys. I'll say one of his own jerseys.
Hey, I feel like I need to full screen you here for a second. So
we good?
All good. The floor is yours.
All right. I was saying Jenkins was raised right because he did what he was supposed to do. But what it ended up happening, he's fighting a bunch of purple jerseys, and then all of a sudden he's fighting one of his own jerseys, and that's a problem. So maybe there's a smarter way to do it that you don't get a flag and stuff, but that's non-negotiable. You protect your quarterback. That's what we do. Even if you don't like the quarterback, you protect him because that's what you do. It's nothing. Don't have to get all reasoning why. That's just what you do. And you don't fight your own teammates, especially when they're fighting another team. So that's where I stand on that. I like that he did that. I like when guys do that. I think it's important. It's a part of the game. It's part of being an offensive lineman. You don't fight your own guys when they're fighting the other team. That looks ridiculous. Then this guy's out here by himself. He's on your team too. He's got a C on his helmet. He's part of the team too. Now you're fighting him. It looks ridiculous.
Yeah, you know what? I can tell that you've spent quite a bit of time with Olin Kreutz.
Yeah, but before that, it was Roberto Garza.
Right.
He was done the same thing.
Oh, man. Love those guys on the offensive line for the Bears, a decade ago. Crazy to think it's been that long. All right, so Sticking with this offensive line, Taylor, when the Bears selected Braxton Jones in the 5th round a few months ago, I don't think anyone could have predicted that he would be the team's starting left tackle. All signs really point to him being the day one starter at that position. Some thought that, all right, maybe they're bringing in Riley Reef as a veteran presence and more of an insurance policy, and maybe Braxton Jones has a little bit of ways to go. Just last week, Riley Reef, and when he was first brought here, he said that, his preference is to play left tackle. Well, last week, Riley Reef kind of shut that down and said that, yeah, I'll be, if I'm playing on this offensive line, it'll be right tackle. So it seems like there may have been a message sent there. I don't know, but it looks as if Braxton Jones, the rookie 5th-round pick, has the left tackle spot on lockdown. As an offensive line enthusiast and a fellow small schooler, Taylor, have you been able to study much of Braxton Jones's game, and what are some tips and pointers you would give to Braxton Jones making the jump from what's classified as a small school to the NFL?
So I've been aware of Braxton because my mentor, the D-line coach, Salamana Tapasa from my college, Humboldt State, or now I think they're Cal Poly Humboldt. We're a Cal State or Cal Technical Institute, so I have a better degree now. But he was the D-line coach at Southern Utah. So he's been talking to me about Braxton for a while. Duke Manyweather, he's the leader in this offensive line development. He does the O-line masterminds, had Braxton as a starter in the NFL. You know what I mean? When he graded him, and I think Duke is one of the best scouts outside of the NFL, breaking players down. So he had Braxton as a starter too. But developing, maybe not day one, but will become a starter. And you could see why, right? After watching the game, you could see why. You could see a lot of things he does well. My question would be this, though, right? If Riley Reef's the right tackle, is Larry Borum the best left tackle option that the Bears have? I'd want to see that competition. I'm clearly rooting for a guy, Braxton, because he went to a small school. My advice would be this. You got Riley Reef has, 150 games of just information on how to play in this league. Sit next to Riley Reef and get those notes, because he has all this wisdom and he could pass it on to you. That'd be the first thing I would say. Watch Riley.
Few more questions for you, Taylor, then I'll let you go. Really do appreciate your time. It's been awesome, great, very informative discussion. Now, you were in Chicago, of course, when Jay Cutler was the team's starting quarterback. Behind him, you had Caleb Haney. The team really only held those two quarterbacks for a handful of years, it seemed like. Jay could move around a little bit, but not nearly as well or as much as the quarterback that's currently at the helm in Chicago, being Justin Fields. I hear mixed opinions all the time, but as somebody who's protected quarterbacks for a living, do you have a preference between protecting the two different styles of quarterback play?
No, I mean that's the point of being an athlete. Like you're adapting to the environment, and we get caught up in drills and these where they take portions of the game. The real adaptation happens to you, like as an O-line unit. You're adapting to the people across from you, the defenders, the guy you got, the linebackers, the DBs. You're adapting to the styles that your O-line play. That's why it takes a while for O-line to kind of mesh well in something like this zone that's a little more finesse. Prior to contact, it takes time. You start adapting to how they move, start adapting to their timing, you start adapting to the way they think, or you think they might pass something off, and you start learning off of each other. But the same thing happens for quarterbacks. You got a quarterback that sits in the pocket and cooks s'mores. You got a quarterback that's going to be rolling out. You adapt to those things. You adapt to how far he's dropping back. You have conversations with that. So I mean, for me as a backup, clearly I have no preference. Just let me get on the field, let me be on the 53, whatever. But with the quarterback, you just have to adapt, because I had Josh McCown. I think he ran a 4.3. So I knew if we got beat or something, he could be rolling out. He could be out of there, right? He was fast. He was a good athlete. But it doesn't change anything, like knowing that he's capable of these things versus what was important is if he's not under pressure, how far is he dropping back? Is he dropping back at 8? Is he 10? Does he drift? The tackles need to know that so they know how far they can run guys by. But it's just you adapting to the demands of the style of the people on the field. The quarterback is no different than you adapting to the man next to you.
Man, the name Josh McCown, that season that, Cutler went down with the injury, and the offense was just rolling, even with Josh McCown at quarterback, and
Yeah.
insane athlete, insane athlete. I don't
Yeah.
think many people realize that. I mean, there's a video that circulates around Twitter every couple of months of Josh McCown at slot receiver for the Detroit
I
Lions.
was just say
And
he played receiver in Detroit.
yeah,
People don't know that.
oh man, he was great, man. Great. And by all accounts, awesome teammate. Seems like a stand-up dude. And yeah, I think he's actually, I know he was in consideration for the Texans head coaching
Yeah.
job. So I'm sure we'll be seeing him here soon, coaching in the NFL, no doubt about it. One last thing before we let you go, Taylor. Alex Kappa, as a Humboldt State alum, this is a guy that obviously won a Super Bowl a couple years ago with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now this offseason, he cashes out in free agency, joins the reigning AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals. He'll be protecting Joe Burrow, who obviously much needed protection there in Cincinnati. How cool is it to see his success, especially being a fellow offensive lineman, seeing where he's at right now, Super Bowl champion, and unfortunately, one of the main reasons why I had you on the show a few years ago, Taylor, was to discuss the Humboldt State, getting rid of their football program. But here is still a guy kind of putting on lumberjack iron. I know he would say in his pregame introductions. I mean, does that make you feel good as an alum? I mean, I know there's, that's a sticky situation there between student athletes and that school getting rid of the program, obviously. But to see a guy like Alex Kappa still put on for the university, still put on for the Humboldt State Lumberjacks, I mean, it's got to be a great feeling.
Yeah, and the lumberjack iron, that I got to give a shout out to, like, my greatest mentor. He might as well be a father of mine. Is Drew Peterson. He's the strength coach of Cal Poly State. I think it's Cal Poly State Humboldt. I can't remember what it's called. It's something like that. But he's the strength coach there. Drew Peterson. He's the greatest strength coach in football history. I'll give Clyde Emmerich, the founder of Strength and Condition. I got to give him that shout out. Then it would go to Drew. But that's what he says. That's why he says lumberjack iron. And I think he would have said it even if Humboldt State still had football, because we hold Drew Peterson in that higher regard. And I love seeing Kappa where he's at when, I don't care if it's an NCAA violation now, but he used to come down, train with me. And when he was in college and when I was training in Arizona, and he asked me if he could play in the NFL. I said, we were at a hotel. I said, jump off this balcony. If you don't believe you could play in the NFL, you're going to be a star. And look at him. He got paid. I love that kid. He is like, he's the perfect pro. He just works. He's humble. He doesn't talk. He doesn't party. He's just a great guy, great teammate, takes his craft seriously. He's deserved everything he gets and more.
Yeah, I mean, that's just awesome to see you kind of praise him like that. I thought it was a big deal to meet him and do a quick interview with him at the NFL Combine. Who'd have thought that he'd have been a Super Bowl champion and then obviously one of the highest paid players at his position in the NFL. Taylor, that'll do it for this discussion tonight. I promise we're not going to wait another 4 years to get you back on, because this has been awesome. You said it, the Bears are your team. We're going to get you on, hopefully, if you're down a few times this season, to talk about the season, to talk about how the team is doing. But really appreciate you taking the time this evening. Any final words before we let you go?
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. There he goes. That's Taylor Boggs, former NFL center, spent the majority of his career with the Chicago Bears, also spent time with the New York Jets as an undrafted free agent coming out of college, spent time with the Detroit Lions, Arizona Cardinals, and all around great dude. Awesome offensive line mind to pick and get the thoughts of on this very much discussed offensive line that we have here with the Chicago Bears. So that'll do it for this episode of On Air with Chris Shanafelt. I, of course, am your host, Chris Shanafelt. Made a special announcement earlier this morning. Every Monday night, starting this coming Monday, August 22nd, starting at 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, I will be joined by Mike Furry on a new podcast that we have decided to start up, and that'll be called the Limestone Live Wire, where we will be previewing and recapping each of Mike Furry and the Limestone Saints football games this season. So it'll be a coach's show with head coach Mike Furry. Really excited to get that started. And again, be sure to check that out every Monday night, really from this coming Monday, August 22nd, until the end of the season. That'll be a lot of fun. Really excited to get that kicked off. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Chris Shanafelt. The spelling is down below. And follow our special guest for tonight, former Bears center Taylor Boggs at tboggs50. Again, great discussion. If you missed today's show in its entirety, be sure to check it out on YouTube as well as Spotify and just about anywhere you can get your podcast. Just search On Air with Chris Shanafelt. For Taylor Boggs, I am Chris Shanafelt. Hope everybody enjoyed tonight's show. And until next time, take care.